Hello and welcome to a brand spanking new CraftySimulations review video. If you have just tuned into the channel, you'll notice that I did two live videos of this particular aircraft, or helicopter I should say. This is the Taog Hanger brand spanking new UH1 Iroquois, or better known as the Huey. And like I said, I've done two live videos flying from here at Wickenby to Waddington via Scampton, around Lincoln, and then I did the return leg, which that video, like I said, was a live video. It's just gone out. This is my actual thoughts on this particular helicopter, and you can probably take a good guess. I'm actually very impressed with this helicopter. It is a stonker. I've flown Taog's Alouette 3, I want to call it, quite a long time even, and I was very impressed with the functionality, the handling, the sounds were amazing because it's a very unique sounding helicopter, and the Huey here is exactly the same. Well, actually no, it's not exactly the same because that would be unfair to the Huey. The Huey is better. It's got the functionality, it's got the controls, it's got the handling challenges regarding flying helicopters, and it has an amazing sound pack. So before I go into my conclusions or any of my thoughts on this particular helicopter even, what we're going to do, we're going to break this video down. We're going to be talking about what the actual developer says, so what they've said in their description. We'll then go for a brief run around the cockpit, and then we shall start up. Like I say, we are currently at Wickenby. We're in Burning Blue Designs payware version of Wickenby. This is my new home airfield for general aviation, and the Huey can obviously fit into here quite nicely. So then we'll do a flight, and then I'll go into my conclusions. So let's just set this up a little bit better, give you a proper view. So let's go get the descriptions. What does the developer say of this particular helicopter? So in the features list, we have three versions to choose from: military, civilian, and high skid variants to suit your mission profile. So we have the ubiquitous military Huey, the Vietnam era Huey. This is a militarized version. Obviously, this is actually a Canadian Air Force rescue helicopter, but this is under the military version of the Huey. We have the civilian variant, which is differs because you have the long skid and short skid version. So this is a short skid Huey. We have longer skids or higher skids on some civilian versions. So that gives you your three main variants of the Huey. We have an authentic, oh trust me this is authentic, sound package. Okay, enjoy a carefully crafted sound package that captures the essence of the UH1H, is iconic rotor and engine sounds. Not only does this capture the sounds brilliantly of the engine, and including the famous blade slap that this helicopter is famous for, it also goes down to the levels of the buttons. You know, they sound exactly as they should. Everything sounds absolutely fantastic. I've always been very, very impressed with the sounds of this one. Where was we? Extensive attachments, so we can customize our helicopter with over 30 attachment options, from external fuel tanks to mission-specific gear. Okay, so the Huey in this particular one is a rescue helicopter, so it is decked out for rescue purposes. Things like the winch would be fitted to a rescue helicopter. We've also got the internal bay compartment set up for rescue purposes. But we can set this up any way we want for any of the roles that the helicopter wants, or we want to do. We have damage simulation, experience realistic damage simulation, adding a new level of challenge and authenticity to your flights. I can damage anything in Flight Simulator, that's just the way I do things, but it's nice that this helicopter, you can damage it, and you can stress it or overstress it. Wide range of liveries, so we can select from 40 detailed liveries to personalise your aircraft. So I've just been flying this one. This is the one that caught my eye. It's a Tiger Stripe Canadian rescue helicopter. I'm hoping this is for real helicopter. I'm going to have a look, see if it is. But we do have the famous Vietnam era, good selection of Vietnam era helicopters, and then we have a multiple selection of civilian repaints, ranging from fire helicopters to general civilian, versions of the Huey. But again, 40 different repaints. So that's amazing. I do like it when the developer makes a lot of repaints, and they're very good repaints as well. So we had advanced flight model utilizing the Microsoft Flight Simulator CFD flight model for an incredibly accurate and responsive flying experience. Translation: this handles very well. This handles like a Huey, and in my view, and I've never flown a Huey, I've never flown in a Huey, I've flown in helicopters, but never something like this. I would expect this to be a very powerful engine, but a very heavy helicopter, and it is. And the lower and slower you go, landing, takeoff, hovering, that kind of stuff, you're doing a lot of work. When you're flying, get above 50 knots, it's a little bit easier, and as it should be, but when you start to maneuver the helicopter, you do need to have your hands on the controls at all times. It's one of those you cannot relax too much with a helicopter. They handle in different ways. We have a systems accuracy, benefit from highly accurate systems modeling, ensuring every switch and gauge works as it should. I would say in the cockpit, 90% of all the bits and pieces work. All the bits that you need to fly, operate, communicate, they all work. Things that don't work, the fuse panels don't work, they don't pop, they don't move, you don't click on them. So that's not a deal breaker for me. But most of all the other stuff does work. So we have firefighting capabilities. Engage in firefighting missions with specialised equipment and realistic fire suppression mechanics, as well as ambulance equipment. Equip your UH1H for emergency medical services with dedicated ambulance equipment ready to save lives. So we have basically the armed version of the Huey, although I don't believe we can actually put weapons on this. I can't find them anywhere, but we have the stands for them. And then we can have this set up for a fire helicopter or a ambulance helicopter. Where was we? Oh yeah, and just detailed documentation and checklist. So on the whole, this is a very, very good helicopter. I love it. I've been flying this thing quite a lot now. Doesn't mean I know how to fly it properly, as we will demonstrate in a few minutes, but it's another one of Taog Hanger's great helicopters. It's a great package, and if you know anything about helicopters, you'll know what a Huey is. It's one of those helicopters, if you hear it, you don't even see it, you have to hear that noise, you go, oh, that's a Huey. So, people know the Huey from a lot of, obviously, Vietnam films, from military service, and obviously Hueys that are still flying now. The Huey is flying, I don't know how many helicopters are flying in the world, but it is flying worldwide, and it's still providing a role and service, which I think is fantastic. So we'll move on to a brief description of the actual controls you get. Okay, so we'll split this into 3 parts here. So I'm just going to go through this briefly because this is the boring part. You want to see me try and fly this helicopter, let's be honest. So the co-pilot section, we have a small selection of controls. Central part, we have our fuel quantity, oil, so our liquids are on these 6. We then have our electrical section here, so what the DC voltage, all that kind of stuff is. Moving over to the pilot section, we have obviously the majority of the controls, instrumentation, which we will be needing. So we have engine related issues here, so our T's and P's, our percent, torque pressure, a rotor section, obviously our speed, our altimeter, our radar altitude, slip and turn, I think this one is, navigational sections here, straight in the middle, with the compass, your altitude, your vertical speed. That is very important in a helicopter because when you slow down to go into a hover fairly close to the ground, you tend not to be able to read where the ground is in speed, so you need to know if you're increasing or decreasing. So this one here is very important. And we also have a stopwatch stroke clock. I think that's just a stopwatch, actually. Moving on to the center pedestal. This is your, and it's very bad because the sun's shining on it. This is your communications section, basically. So your radios, militarized version, obviously what the Huey has. IFF is over here. Fuel section, you'll need this for startup. This is your warning section, so when things aren't happy, they'll show up there. Chip detectors, they'll be needed for startup, as well as your force trim and hydraulic controls. Obviously the controls are here, and they are exactly what they should be in a helicopter. Throttle section is obviously this section here. Moving on to the upper section, like I say, the fuse panel does not work. That's fine. It's not a deal breaker for me. Moving on to, we have lights, wipers, heating, more lights. Okay, these are dialable. Your AC power and DC power sections. So not many things you have to pay too much attention to here on the helicopter. Once this is all up and running, you just generally leave it as it is. You might guess that I'm actually I'm trying to skip through this as much as I can whilst giving out some detail, because I love flying this thing. It's absolutely amazing. You do have hidden down here the what would be the tablet. Obviously this is a Huey, so it's a clipboard, it's not a tablet, but these are the options that you can put on or remove from the helicopter. So we can have things like the wire cutters, steps, we'll have them on. We can have the surfboards or the steps, or nothing. So if we put the surfboards and go to the outside, there's the surfboards. Now obviously this is off a Vietnam film, and I've forgotten what it is. I've forgotten, oh god, it's an iconic film and I've forgotten it, but it's when all the Hueys are flying in before they do a strike, and it's Ride of the Valkyries, I think, is playing in the background, and there's a Huey even that has surfboards on it. So I think that's where that's come from. So we'll get rid of that and put the steps back on. We have a particle separator, so that goes on top of the engine, which is this bit here. So again, modern Hueys may have that. We have engine bay we can open up. We have an infrared suppressor, that's for the military Hueys. A high frequency antenna, again, probably for militarized Hueys, I would say. Co-pilot doors, left rear door, we've got that one open at the moment, so we can click on those and obviously open and shut them to our heart's content with good sound. We can hide the crew in the outside view. So at the moment, obviously I have nobody's brave enough to sit in the passenger seat or the co-pilot seat, but if we look inside, from the outside I should say, there is crew. I'll leave that as it is. So we have on the right hand side, we have the nose APR 139 antenna and ultra and very high frequency antennas. We have side armament mounts. Okay, so we put them on. Obviously this is a rescue helicopter, but we can have the door machine guns, which would be, off the top of my head, an M60 machine gun. And I do believe Hueys nowadays have been mounted up with miniguns on the side of them. I think actually they did come from Vietnam as well, but I don't know, is it the M134? I can't remember. The short-barreled minigun can be mounted to the real helicopter. Obviously this one doesn't have it. We have the winch already fitted. We can open the right side of the engine bay up, and then we have the pilot door, right rear door, and these two here are for FX, so we can hide the rotor wash or we can hide the heat blur. So we have heat blur coming out the back of the engine, and we also have rotor wash, which is when we get to a high power setting for takeoff, you will see an effect. Doesn't seem to affect the FPS of my system. I'm not going to vouch for everybody's system, but I have seen effects before have a negative effect, try saying that fast, on the FPS. So it's nice, it's there, it's realistic, that's what you should have. Interior options, okay, so we can disable VRS. Is that the rotor stall? I can't remember. I can't remember what that is. I know it's helicopter stuff, and I can't remember off the top of my head. We can have a GPS mounted to our helicopter. I don't want that. I know when I'm flying. We can have a modern even, panel avionics. This is really good, actually, because obviously Vietnam-era helicopters don't have this setup, but we do have Hueys that have been modernized. Ones that fly, obviously, now, today, in 2024, will not have Vietnam-era controls. So we have a G1000 sort of system here, and some of the, obviously, the controls have changed, moved over to more modern setup. So we'll get rid of that. Don't need that. We can show the crew inside, so click on that, and we can have the crew. It's fairly realistic, so that's just the flight crew. We can transport troops in the back, so obviously we was a rescue helicopter, so now we are technically carrying troops. I'm not sure what camo pattern you're supposed to be wearing, but I don't think that looks Vietnam. I could be wrong, certainly not Tiger Stripe. So we'll get rid of that. So we'll have the medical cabin back, thank you. So that's the medical cabin, obviously with our stretcher board. We can have the crew chief, which we would also have. Again, he's very important in a real helicopter because the pilot can't always see what's going on around him in landing and takeoff situations, so the crew chief will always be keeping an eye on what's going on. We can turn off the damage simulation. I'm not going to do that. Repair engine damages. By the look of it, I haven't damaged too much. So they're all in the green. So that's your engine, and that will be your gearbox. I can't remember what the technical terminology will be, but yeah, they're in the green, so they're happy. So it's nice to have those options. If I can click on it to get rid of it. So, how cool? How cool are you to be sat there wearing shades, sitting out the side of a Huey? Right, so this is the fun part now. This is the part you've actually wanted to pay attention to if you haven't watched the live videos. I'm going to fly me a helicopter. So I'll centralise that, make sure TrackIR is happy, and it seems to be. We'll turn that back off again. So let's bring up our checklist, because I do have a checklist for the Huey. So we'll go to the upper section, and right, so anti-collision lights are going to be set to on. They are going to be set to flash. We do need them on flash. AC power is set to AC phase. It is. DC power set to essential bus. It is. Main generator on, close cover. So main generator, it is set to on. We'll just set that to reset. It goes to off and goes to on. And guarded. Battery is on. Clear that annoying noise. We go down to low RPM and clear. Right, so audio alarm sorted. Fuel system, which is down here, this little lever down here, so we shall click fuel system set to on. Hydraulic toggle switch is set to up, which is zoom in. Hydraulic is set to up. Force trim switch is set to up. That's that one. It is. Chip detector, toggle, tail down, XMXN, and up. So we'll go tail and rotor, XMXN, and we'll set to both. That's set. Throttle section, we're going to have to, oh no, we can still do it. So we shall wind that to off, and then wind that all the way to off. This is done with a mouse wheel, by the way, and we'll set that about a quarter up. So now we're at the fun part. Now we're at the startup section. So startup section for this is actually quite easy. We will be paying attention. I'll zoom in to this particular gauge here. So what we're going to do is we'll be pressing and holding the start switch. I've selected a switch to my Thrustmaster. So press and hold the start switch and get the percentage up to 40 before releasing it, and then idle up to full. So translation: press and hold the start switch, watch this wind up. You'll see the rotor blades because the shade will go as the rotor blade spins. Get to 40%. Release the start switch, and then throttle up to 100% on the engine. So let's get that up and going. So we'll clear on the left, clear on the right. So that's starting. There's 10%. Generator load has just come up. Rotor is spinning. 20%. 30%. 40% and release. And just listen to these noises. What an amazing noise. Absolutely amazing. Just want to check the audio while I'm here. So hopefully you can hear me. Right, going back to the upper, throttle. Throttle is now set to full. Going back to the upper section. Starter to standby. Generator is down. It is. Inverter set to main. It is. Radar altimeter, that's down the bottom here. Blah, 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 blah. Set that to about 50. It is. Synchronized compasses, not bothered about. Not really. Oh yeah, we need to do this part. Set this over to main gen. And that is it. Just want to make sure everything is all set. So lights are set, not worried about internal lights. That's all done, that's all done, that's all done. So we do have an engine oil problem. Intriguing. So our chip detector seems to not be working particularly well. Just want to have a look at something. Have I damaged something in previous flight? Yes. Cleared. So we had to cheat on that. I don't know why we damaged something on that. I'm not 100%, but we did. So everything is happy now. Joys of Flight Simulator. So today's flight is going to be, we're going to stay in the Wickenby area and just basically show off the Huey. So we will set altimeter to 0 that, because we're staying in the local area. We'll shut the crew door now. So let's go. We'll try and stay away from any light aircraft. We'll position ourselves out to the runway. Hover taxiing is never one of my strong points when it comes to helicopters. Don't matter what the helicopter is, really. So, let's get going. There's 60 knots. Once this helicopter gets going, it's quite... I'm not going to say easy. Easy would be... Listen to that. The ubiquitous blade slap from a Huey. Anyway, like I was saying, past 60 knots, it becomes a little bit easier to handle, to fly. Obviously, like all helicopters in the flight simulator, I would definitely recommend getting yourself a set of rudder pedals. It is essential for flying helicopters. I think you may get away with any twist stick setups. I don't know whether there is too many of them now. I have the Thrustmaster Warthog setup, which does not have twist capability in the stick. But I have got a set of rudder pedals from Virpil, obviously in a helicopter. They are torque pedals, or anti-torque pedals. But as you can see now, it's a lovely helicopter, it really is. Obviously, one of the most important things you will have to change on your control stick will be to add force trim. Force trim is like trim for aircraft, it's force trim for helicopters, and it is essential to set up force trim. It takes away some of the workload of having to put lots of inputs into the stick to get the helicopter to do what you want. Just listen to that sound. Something about Taog Hanger's helicopters that sound exactly like the real thing. Like I said, I've flown the Alouette 3 and I absolutely loved it, and the sounds in that were fantastic. This is exactly the same. Sound effects are absolutely amazing. I think you could put Hueys in a same batch of aircraft like the Spitfire, Chinook. I can't think off the top of my head now. I'm just loving the flying so much. But it's an iconic helicopter. If you don't know nothing about aviation, chances are you hear that noise and you'll go, "That's a Huey." Now, yes, I will tell you now. The Huey is not the real name of the helicopter. The real name of this helicopter is the Iroquois, which I believe is a Native American name. But it is the Huey. If it wasn't for the fact YouTube would throw a wobbly, I would love to be playing, is it Ride of the Valkyries now? Just would be perfect hearing that soundtrack and this helicopter's sounds. I always remember listening, I went to, I think it was Duxford Air Museum in Cambridgeshire years ago this was, and there's a Huey in the museum, and it's a Vietnam era Huey, and I was talking to one of the staff members, helpers, and he was telling me this story. And in Vietnam, obviously this helicopter was used for troop transport, as it was the best way of moving troops around, as it is nowadays even. But Vietnam is a jungle, very few open clear spots, especially to put, for one helicopter it's quite easy to put down in a smallish open spot, but they don't fly in ones, they fly in groups, batches, and to put them all down at the same time quickly to get the helicopters out, because the helicopter is very at the risk of the enemy while it's on the ground not moving. Hueys would fly along, get to their designated landing spot. It was still a jungle, there wasn't an open clearing, and they'd just slowly descend into the jungle. Now obviously the trees, the canopy wouldn't be that high, but they would use their rotor blades to chop a clearing out. You just imagine that. I mean, the rotor blade, we saw this before I started, the rotor blade is very thick. And it was just an amazing story to hear what Huey pilots had to do. Obviously, this was one of the first helicopters to be a dedicated troop transport helicopter, henceforth the UH in its name. It was also one of the first helicopters to become armed as well. Like I said earlier on, we can have door guns mounted, which were M60s. And the helicopter would also be able to have forward-facing M60s. I think there was up to 4 M60 machine guns added to the front. Also, the miniguns were also added. And also rocket pods. I do believe even grenade launchers may have been added. I can't remember the top of my head, but the helicopter was able to defend itself. It wasn't really long until the Cobra, the dedicated gunship, came out when the Hueys got their proper protection. Because no matter how you arm this helicopter, it is still a troop transport helicopter. It's big, it's wide, it's not particularly fast. Whereas the Cobra, fast, lethal, sleek, and able to carry a lot more armament. So bring ourselves into the hover as best we can. Looking at our vertical speed, we are still in a slight decrease. So the slower you go, the more you have to use the torque pedals. The slower you go, the more you have to put power into it to hold the helicopter into its position. And the more maneuvers you do, so the more 360 turns, let's say, to do, you would have to add more power. It's an interesting way of moving a helicopter. It's different to aircraft, obviously. But the Taog Hangers created such an amazing helicopter, it feels like it should handle this way. So we'll slowly bring ourselves into land. We're going to land, hopefully, in front of the control tower. It's all about minute controls, input. Look at the point ahead, don't look too close. Should be getting the wash effect any minute. There we are. And touchdown. So, fuel system's coming off. About to say that shouldn't shut off so quickly. Low warning will turn off. Just listen to the sounds, it's amazing. Inverter coming to off. Essential bus. Starter generator off. Position lights set to off. Anti-collision is still set on. Battery's still on. Rotor brake. So, anti-collision lights are now off. Battery is off. Could have sworn I turned those lights off. Better if I do that. So, there we go. Is this better than the Robinson R44, of which I was coveting very much? I think it is. I mean, yes, obviously it's a Huey, it's a completely different helicopter, but as helicopters go, we're entering that phase where developers are creating such amazing products. And if you're interested in rotary aviation, if you're interested in rotary aviation, then this Huey is amazing. Not only is it able to do short flights like I've just done now, it's also available to do long distance. You can have a GPS, you have the modern avionics package you can fit to this thing. You can fly it long distance, set up flight routes, and, you know, fly the Huey to your heart's content. It's difficult to fly, and it gets more difficult the closer to the ground and slower it gets, but it's challenging, and a challenge is good. This helicopter, I think, handles extremely well. I can believe that this helicopter has been set up to handle exactly like the real thing. Some helicopters, some aircraft, you just know that there's something not right with their handling package. I know Flight Simulator did an update to the way helicopters handle, and I'm beginning to think that there's a lot of developers now releasing helicopters with that update added, or handling package, I suppose, added to their helicopters that make them more realistic. And it's fantastic. This thing sounds great, it looks great, it handles great, you've got all the functionality of the controls inside. It's a complete package, it's a no-brainer. If you're into rotary aviation, check out this Huey. It is awesome. So I hope you like this video. If you've got any questions or comments about the Huey, then please bang them below. I'll answer them as soon as I can, as whenever I get to look on the comment section. And I will see you guys in a future Microsoft Flight Simulator video very, very soon.